So this is a bookmark sampler piece. There are a number of different techniques in this piece. We've got short trails which can be worked in cloth stitch or half stitch. We've got diamonds which can be worked in cloth stitch or half stitch. There's rose ground, for which there are a number of different variations. There's a spider, again there's lots of variations you can use for that, and there's honeycomb ground. We've also got a straight foot side at each side. We'll finish at a point, and I'll be finishing with a simple tassel. So to start with, we're going to add in the pairs at the top of the piece. To do this, we're going to put in a couple of support pins, temporary pins, up at the top. So I've placed a pinhole, and I'm going to put a pin in each of those. I'm going to hang a pair of bobbins on each pin. There's one there and one there. Then I'm going to work the top pinhole by doing half stitch, pin, half stitch, so standard half stitch ground. So half stitch the two pairs, place a pin and half stitch to close. Now I can lift the support pins to release the pairs and let them drop down onto that top pin. Now I'm going to work along the left hand side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hang a pair on the support pin. Then with these two left hand pairs, I'm going to work half stitch, pin, half stitch, release the pair from the support pin and let it drop down. So I shall continue this working along the row to the left, half stitch, pin, half stitch, release the pair, hang the next one on, half stitch, pin, half stitch, release the pair. So now I need to add an extra pair in for my foot side on the left hand side, for the foot side passive. So I'm just going to pop a pin in that pinhole there, hang a pair on it, then I'm going to work through it in cloth stitch and twist. Then I'm going to hang one more pair on the support pin or the temporary pin, half stitch, pin, half stitch. In future, when I come to the edge, I'm going to work a standard foot side edge stitch, but I'm hanging in the top pair in this way. It makes a neater finish. So I'm going to add an extra twist on the edge pair, and that will be ready when I come to it the next time. So now I'm going to do exactly the same on the right hand side. That's all 20 pairs now in. So the first piece of the pattern is to work a cloth stitch or half stitch diamond. So I'm going to work it in cloth stitch. We're going to start with the centre two pairs, and I'm going to cloth stitch them together. Then I'm going to look and see which one is going to become my worker, and I can do this by looking at the working line. So the working line is going to go off to the left hand side first, so that tells me that the right hand pair is going to be my worker. So I'm going to put two twists on the right hand pair and pin between the two. Then I'm going to cloth stitch back through that pair and take in one new pair from the left, making sure it's got the twist on as it comes from the ground. Cloth stitch through that, twist the worker twice and pin. Coming back, I'm going to work through the two pairs in cloth stitch, take one more from the right hand side, cloth stitch through that, twist the worker twice and pin. Coming back to the left, I'm now coming through 3 pairs in cloth stitch. Bring the next one in from the left, work through that, twist the worker twice and pin. I'm going to continue in cloth stitch and I'm going to tension every row, and each time you place a pin you're taking a pair in from the side as you get to the end. So take 1 pair in there, cloth stitch through, twist twice and pin. And I'm going to continue like this until I get to the widest point of the diamond. So now I'm at the widest part of the diamond, and I've brought in a pair at each pinhole as I've worked. I now need to reduce down so that I'm back to 2 pairs at the bottom of the diamond. So I'm going to continue working in cloth stitch, and this time when I get to the opposite end of the row I'm going to leave the last pair out and not work it. So I'm not going to work through this pair, twist my workers twice and pin. Then coming back, I'll do the same on the other side. Again, I'm not going to work through this pair, twist the workers twice and pin up. So I shall continue in this way, leaving an additional pair out on each side as I work along until I get to the bottom point where I should be left with my worker and 1 final passive pair. Leave a pair out, twist twice, pin up. Placing the last pin, I now have a pair left out at each pinhole on the left and on the right, and I have 2 pairs at the bottom pin. So the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close that pin with a cloth stitch and then add 1 twist on each pair. Then I'm going to add 1 twist on each of the other pairs that are coming out of the diamond. And the same on the right hand side. So now looking at my piece of lace, I have a line of ground to work here and do the edge stitch, and then I can work this little cloth stitch or half stitch trail. Now I need to work through this ground to the edge, but before I do that I'm just going to make sure that my edge is nicely set up, ready. So I've got my edge pair and I've got another pair here and I've got my foot side passive. So before I do anything else I'm going to take this pair here through the foot side passive in cloth stitch and twist. That's just preparation. Now I'm going to work down this lining ground, so half stitch, pin, half stitch, half stitch, pin, half stitch. Then I'm going to work in cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive. Make sure I have 2 twists on my edge pair, and then I'm going to work in cloth stitch and twist through my edge pair, put an extra twist on the outside pair, pin underneath both pairs and tension up, and then leaving this pair behind, I'll come back with this pair in cloth stitch and twist through that foot side passive. So now I have 1, 2, 3 pairs coming from the right, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the left, with which to start my trail. So you can work this in cloth stitch or half stitch. For simplicity, I'm going to work this one in cloth stitch. So as we did with the diamond, we're going to work the first 2 pairs in cloth stitch. Looking at the working line, as with the diamond, I can see that the right hand pair after that stitch is now going to be the worker. So I'm going to twist that one twice and pin up. Then I'm going to work back with the right hand pair as the worker. I'm going to work back to the left through that pair and bring 1 in. Twist twice and pin up. Coming back, so cloth stitch through 1, 2, bring an extra one in from the right, twist twice, and pin. Coming back to the left, this time through 1, 2, 3, bring an extra one in, twist twice, and pin. Tension those up so you can see how they're sitting. Back to the right, we'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, bring an extra one in. Now can you see we've reached the point there, so we'll work through that and twist twice. We'll come back through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, an extra one in on the left, pin, tension up. Now as we'd reached the point on that right hand side, this time when we come across we're going to leave one out on the right hand side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, leaving that one out, twist twice and pin, back to the left, we're not quite at the point there, so we're going to bring that one in from the left, twist twice, and that gets us to the left hand point. And I'm going to stop there just for the moment. So we're halfway through the trail. So if we look at the right hand side, we now have 3 pinholes to work here before we can bring the pairs in to the right hand trail where it gets wider. So coming over to the right hand side, we have our edge pair, our foot side passive, and we have 1, 2 pairs that are coming out of the trail. So I'm going to put a twist on those, and working with the right hand pair, we're going to come through the foot side passive in cloth stitch and twist. We're going to work through the edge stitch in cloth stitch and twist. I'm going to add an extra twist on the edge pair and pin up under both. Then leaving the outside pair there, I'm going to come back with this pair, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, where it's going to meet the other pair that had come out of the trail. Half stitch, pin, half stitch for the next round. Then again, the right hand pair, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge pair, extra twist on the edge pair, and pin up under 2. Leave the outside pair behind and return in cloth stitch and twist, ready to meet the trail. So now we have this line coming down the trail here, and we have a pair to come in and a pair to come in there. We won't have a pair coming in there because that's the inside point of the trail, and I will explain that in just a moment. So coming back to the left hand side, we're going to pick up our worker, and we can now continue working on our trail. So working through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm coming to this inside point here, and because it's the inside corner of a trail, we're not taking any pairs in, but we're also not leaving any pairs out. So I'm going to twist the worker here, place my pin and tension up. Then I'm going to work back to the left, and because my next pinhole is in from the point, I'm going to leave one behind, twist my worker twice and pin. Then coming back to the right, our trail is widening on the right hand side, so I'll take a pair in, twist twice and pin. Coming back to the left, work through, leave a pair out, twist twice and pin. Coming back to the right, take a pair in to get to this point, twist twice and pin. So that's now the widest point at the right hand side of our trail. So from now on, when we get to a pinhole, we shall be leaving a pair out each time. Through to the left, leave that pair out, twist the worker twice and pin. Let's have a little bit of a tension there. Coming back to the right, 1, 2, 3, leave that one out at the point, twist twice and pin. This time coming back, we're going to leave this pair out, so we're going to come through 1, 2 pairs, twist the worker twice and pin at the bottom point of the trail. So that pair will leave out at that pinhole, and we have 2 pairs at the bottom. Finish off by cloth stitching the 2 together and put 1 twist on each pair. Then working back along the trail, we're going to put a twist on each pair coming out of the left, and a twist on the remaining 2 pairs coming out from the right. So that's how now our trail completed. If I zoom in, you should be able to see that a little bit clearer. So now I'm going to work this little bit of ground on the right hand side so that I've worked down to this line, and we're ready to have these pairs coming from this side before I repeat and do the same process on the opposite side with the trail there. So coming to the edge, got our pair coming out of the trail here, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge pair with an extra twist on the edge pair, pin under 2. Leave the outer pair behind, cloth stitch and twist back through the foot side passive to meet the ground. Half stitch, pin half stitch for the ground. And this pair can come out to the edge, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge pair, extra twist on the edge pair, pin under 2 and tension, then the returning pair in cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive. So now looking here, we're going to come to these 2 pairs to work this next line of ground out to the edge. Half stitch, pin, half stitch, half stitch, pin, half stitch, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge pair with an extra twist on the outer pair, pin under 2, tension up, and cloth stitch and twist back through the foot side passive. So now if you look, I've got a nice neat straight line all the way down there, and all the pairs are worked down to that point. Now I can go back up to the top and start my next trail. So now I'm back at the left hand side. I have this pair into the ground. We have another ground stitch here, but this pair is actually the foot side passive. I have a pair here and my edge pair, so I'm going to bring this pair here in cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive. This is exactly what we did on the opposite side. So now we have 1, 2 pairs for the ground, foot side passive and our edge pair. So coming into the right, I'm going to take the next pair from the right, work it in ground out to the edge, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge pair, extra twist on the edge pair, pin under 2, tension up, back in cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive. So now I have 1, 2, 3 pairs to come into the ground from the left hand side, and I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coming in from the right. So again, I'm going to work the trail. I'm going to cloth stitch the 2 top pairs through each other. The right hand pair will become my worker, so I'm going to put 2 twists on that and pin up. Cloth stitch through and take one in from the left, twist twice and pin, back to the right, taking one in from the right, twist twice and pin, back to the left, take one in from the left, twist twice and pin. That's that widest point there for now on the left. So back to the right, take one in, twist twice and pin, back to the left, and because we'd reached the widest point on the left, I'm going to leave a pair out, twist twice and pin, back to the right, take a pair in, twist twice and pin. Again, a quick reminder, when you're bringing pairs from one section to the other, they need to have a twist on the pair. Back to the left. Again, I'm going to leave one out. So here we've reached the inside point of the trail. So coming back out, I'll take one in, twist twice, so let's do the outside section so that we can get the pairs out to the edge and back to finish the trail. So with a trail like this, you must do half, work on the ground to the side of it so that you can then work the other half. So here I'm going to take this pair here out to the edge, cross stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cross stitch and twist through the edge pair and an extra twist and pin under both, tension up, cross stitch and twist back through the foot side passive, half stitch, pin, half stitch, getting carried away, through that ground, and then take the left hand pair from that ground out to the edge, cross stitch and twist through the edge, extra twist on that outside edge pair, pin up under two, then bring the inner pair back, cross stitch and twist through that foot side passive. Then I'm going to come back to the right hand side and pick up my worker. Come back to the left. So we didn't leave one out here because that was the inside point, but now we're coming out wider, we can put one back in. Twist twice, back to the right, leaving one out because we're coming in on the right hand side now. But we're still getting wider on the left for one more pinhole, so we'll take one in there, twist twice, leaving one out when we get to the right hand side, twist twice, come back to the left, where we're now reducing on both sides because that was the widest point, so we'll leave that out, twist twice, a little bit of tension, come back to the right, leaving one out, twist twice, and pin, and working back to the final pinhole. This time we go through 1, 2, twist twice, pin. Then with our final two pairs, cloth stitch and put a twist on each. Again, a twist on each pair that's coming out of the trail, to the right and again to the left. And as we did on the right hand side, I'm now going to do this little section of ground and edge, so that we're ready for the next section. So cloth stitch and twist, cloth stitch and twist, extra one on the worker, pin under 2, cloth stitch and twist back through that passive. Now we can work this ground stitch, half stitch, pin, half stitch. Going to take this one out through the edge, cloth stitch and twist, cloth stitch and twist, extra twist on the edge pair, back through the foot side passive. Now I'm going to come along, going to do this ground, half stitch, pin, half stitch, half stitch, pin, half stitch, cloth stitch and twist through the foot side passive, cloth stitch and twist through the edge, extra twist on the edge pair, pin under 2, then back through the foot side passive. So now we have all our pairs coming from the left. Again, a nice line up there, and then we have our pairs from the right, each of them with one twist, and we'll be ready to start the next section, which is this rose ground with a row of ground around it. So now we've done the top diamond and the 2 trails, one on either side. The next section to work is this rose ground. Now before we do the rose ground, I have a row of ground here and here to work out. Now I find it's good practice that when you have a situation like this, work the line of ground all the way to the edge and bring the edge pair back in through the foot side passive. If you do it every time, then you're less likely to get muddled up over which is the edge pair, which is the passive, and you're less likely to have an issue with that. Okay, so I'm going to work the line of ground down to the left, so because I left this at the edge, this pair has come through the foot side passive, so I can work that ground stitch, take it out through the foot side passive in cloth stitch and twist, take it through the edge stitch and cloth stitch and twist, add an extra twist to the worker and pin under both, and then bring the inner pair back through the foot side passive. And if you do that every time, you'll know that it's always in that position when you come to the edge. So if I now go back and work the right hand side in the same way, so I'm going to bring this top pair down through this right hand line of ground, and again when I'm coming from one section to another, I'm making sure there's a twist on every pair. Again, my pair's waiting through the foot side passive, and I go out to the edge, cloth stitch and twist, cloth stitch and twist, extra twist, pin under 2, cloth stitch and twist back. Again, it's a good habit to get into. So now I'm going to come to the middle and we're going to work this section of rose ground. So you can see the rose ground is denoted by these little diamonds in between 4 ground stitch pins. So the rose ground is kind of worked into 2 stages. There's lots and lots of variations of rose ground, and the one I'm going to use here is the double rose. So before you work the rose itself, you need to do what I call a foundation stitch on either side. So each rose, which is 4 pinholes, is worked with 2 pairs from the left and 2 pairs from the right. So we're going to work a foundation stitch, and in this case for the double rows I'm going to work cloth stitch and twist. So cross, twist, cross, twist with the 2 pairs from the left, and I'm going to do the same with the 2 pairs from the right. Cross, twist, cross, twist. So now I've worked my foundation stitch, I can work the 4 pinholes for the rows. So I'm going to work these pinholes in half stitch, pin, half stitch. Again, there's lots of variations, so I could have worked them in cloth stitch, I could have worked them the foundation stitches in half stitch and the rose ground in half stitch, but this one, my foundation stitch is a cloth stitch and twist, and my rose ground is half stitch. So with the 2 middle pairs I'm going to work half stitch, pin, half stitch. Then with the 2 left hand pairs of the 4 I'm going to work half stitch, pin, half stitch on the left side. With the 2 right hand pairs of the 4, half stitch, pin, half stitch on the right hand side, and then back to the middle and half stitch, pin, half stitch with the middle 2 pairs. Now before I finish this rose, I now need to make 2 more foundation stitches, one on the left and one on the right. So with the 2 left hand pairs I'm going to work a cloth stitch and twist, so cross, twist, cross, twist. And with the 2 right hand pairs I'm going to work a cloth stitch and twist. And that is the double rows, one section of the double rows. So I'm now going to work to the left hand side and do this next rows. I already have my foundation stitch with the pairs coming from the right, so I'm going to take 2 pairs from the left and I'm going to work my foundation stitch of cloth stitch and twist with those. So now with the 4 pairs I'm going to work the 4 middle pairs of the rows. So with the 2 middle pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch. With the 2 left pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch. With the 2 right hand pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch. And with the 2 middle pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch. And then to finish off again I'm going to work my foundation stitch with the 2 pairs to the left, cloth stitch and twist, and with my 2 pairs from the right, cloth stitch and twist. Now I'm going to move over to the right hand side and work this next set of 4 here. The 2 pairs on the left hand side where they're coming out of the previous rows have already got their foundation stitch on. So I'm going to work a foundation stitch with the 2 pairs from the right, cloth stitch and twist, and then I'm going to work the rows in the middle. So the 2 middle pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch, the left hand pair, half stitch, pin, half stitch, the right hand pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch, and the middle 2 pairs again, half stitch, pin, half stitch. Once again I'm going to work a foundation stitch with the 2 pairs on each side, so cloth stitch and twist with the left hand 2 pairs and cloth stitch and twist with the right hand 2 pairs. Move the right hand pairs out of the way, bring the left hand pairs over and bring the other 2 pairs from the left, and we can work the bottom one. So already we have the foundation stitch on the left as it came from the previous rows, and we have it on the right because we've just done it from the rows on the right. So we can go straight into the middle 4 pins. Half stitch, pin, half stitch with the middle 2 pairs, half stitch, pin, half stitch with the left, half stitch, pin, half stitch with the right hand pairs, and half stitch, pin, half stitch with the middle 2 pairs. Then once again, as we did before, our foundation stitch on the 2 left pairs, cloth stitch and twist, and the foundation stitch with the 2 right hand pairs, cloth stitch and twist. And that's that set of rose ground done. Now here in this pattern we've got a line of ground underneath the rose ground before we can work these 2 trails. So I'm going to work that. So working from the left hand side, we'll bring the pairs across, find the pair coming from the left diagonally to come down that line, and I'm going to work that in half stitch, pin, half stitch through all 4 pairs that are coming out of the left side of this little section of rose ground. I can't do the bottom pin because it's waiting on the line coming from this side, so I'm going to go to the right hand side and find the pair coming down this line. Oops. And I'm going to work that in half stitch, pin, half stitch along that line. Try not to forget to close the pin after you work your half stitch. Meeting at the bottom with the final 2. So now that's all our ground done there. So the next section is to work the 2 trails either side here and the extra little bit of ground at the bottom there, so that we're ready to do the spider. And I'm going to work those in exactly the same way as I worked these 2 trails up here. So that's the 2 trails worked on either side, and now we're down to work the spider. So we have the spider here, and it has a row of ground that runs all the way around it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work the top half of the ground around the spider. So working down to the left side first. And then coming back and working down the right hand side of the spider. So these 2 pairs are, or this pair here is for the bottom line of ground here, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 legs on the right hand side, then 1, 2, 3, 4 legs on the left hand side, and then a pair to work down the bottom side of the ground. Now we've got 4 legs on either side, and the rule of thumb with the spider is the number of twists on each leg reflects the number of legs you've got from either side. So we've already got 1 twist on, so I'm going to put 2, 3, 4. To make sure I've got 4 twists on each leg. Okay. So a standard spider, you'd work by working the 4 pairs on the left in cloth stitch through the pairs on the right, place a pin in the middle, doing the same thing again, the 4 pairs on the left work through the 4 pairs on the right, and then you'd put your 4 twists underneath. I'm going to do a slightly different variation for this one, in that the outside ring of the outside pair on either side of the spider is going to be worked in cloth stitch and twist. So I'm going to take the first pair from the left, and I'm going to work it in cloth stitch and twist through the 4 legs from the right hand side. And tension that up. Then I'm going to return and take the first pair that I worked through, this one here, and I'm going to take that through the remaining 3 legs on the left hand side in cloth stitch and twist. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the conventional first half of the spider with the 3 remaining legs on the left and the right. So I'm going to take the first pair from the left and work in cloth stitch through 3 pairs to the right. Returning for the second pair on the left, again cloth stitch through 3 pairs to the right, and then the third pair on the left and cloth stitch through 3 pairs to the right. So I'm halfway through the spider. I'm going to pop the pin in the middle and working from the middle out, I'm going to tension all the pairs in the spider. So you can just about see I've got a cloth stitch section in the middle, and then I've got an extra pair that's sort of separated from the rest with that twist on the outside. So I'm now going to do the same in reverse. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to take my 3 pairs from the left and work them in cloth stitch through 3 pairs to the right. So 1, 2, 3, come back for the next one, 1, 2, 3, come back for the last one, 1, 2, 3. So that's the middle bit. Then I'm going to put a twist on each of these 6 central pairs, ready to go through the outside ring pair on either side. Then I'm going to come over to the left, pick up this pair waiting here, and I'm going to work that in 3 pairs to the right in cloth stitch and twist. Then I'm going to come over to the right and pick up this pair from the right, and this time this is going to go back through 4 pairs because it will go through the 3 original and the one that I've just left there. Again, cloth stitch and twist through. Tension that up. You can just see the ring now outside that inner cloth stitch spider. That should be twisted. Okay, all pairs have got 1 twist on. Spider's leg needs to have 4 because it's 4 legs on either side, so I'm going to add 3 more twists on each leg. And then to finish off the spider, I'm going to work the line of ground coming down the left and the line of ground coming down the right. So going back to the pair that was left before we did the spider here, and I'm going to work half stitch, pin half stitch down the line towards the bottom. That's as far as I can go on that side. Tension up so that my spider's a nice shape, and I'm going to do the other side. So again, the pair coming down the ground here, and we'll go half stitch, pin half stitch down to the bottom of the spider. finishing off with this last one at the point. Again, one final tension, and there you can see, if I zoom in, our spider with a ring around it. So the next piece we're going to work is the honeycomb, but before we do that, I've just got this single row of ground to work here so that we're in the right place to start. So I'm going to do the honeycomb on the left. So I shall take this line of ground out to the left. So now we've got 3 pairs from the left, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs from the right, ready to work our honeycomb. So as you can see, we've got 3 pinholes on the left and the right, and normally in a ground stitch you'd have a pinhole in the middle, but in the honeycomb we've got this this oval that tells us we're going to do a honeycomb. That means that the threads coming from this pinhole here and this pinhole here can't go into the middle because there's no pin in there, so they're going to come straight down on either side. So let me show you that now. So I'm going to work the 3 ground stitches on the left from the top of the shape. So half stitch, pin, half stitch, pin, half stitch, and half stitch, pin, half stitch. Then coming back to the top, I'm going to work the next 2 pinholes on the right, so half stitch, pin, half stitch, pin, half stitch. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs here. These 2 in the middle would naturally normally go across the middle of that, where that oval is, but because it's honeycomb they won't. They're going to come straight down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the 2 pairs from the left and work a half stitch, pin, half stitch on the left hand side, and the 2 pairs from the right, I'm going to work a half stitch, pin, half stitch on the right hand side, and then the 2 middle pairs I'm going to work a half stitch, pin, half stitch at the bottom. So you can just about see, I think, that we've now got sort of a little open oval in the middle of that section there. So I'm now going to work along to the next section to the right. So we've got 1, 2, 3 pairs here, and we want 2 more pairs from the right here. This top one I'm going to work in ground through those 2 pairs, so half stitch, pin, half stitch, and then we've got the same again. So we've got 4 pairs here. With the 2 from the left we're going to do half stitch, pin, half stitch on the left, and the 2 from the right we're going to work half stitch, pin, half stitch on the right, and the 2 in the middle we'll do half stitch, pin, half stitch at the bottom. So that's the second ring of our honeycomb, and we've got 1 more to do, which is here, but we need to just work that tiny little bit of ground there to get the pairs out to the edge and back in. So let's do that now. So we've got our edge pair and our foot side passive. So I'm going to take the next pair out, so cross stitch and twist through the passive, cross stitch and twist through the edge, extra twist on the edge pair, pin up under 2, return with the inside pair, cross stitch and twist. Then I can work this ground stitch, and out through the edge again. And I've now got my 2 pairs to do the next honeycomb. Let's move our cover cloth down a little bit so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to work these 2 ground stitches here for the left hand side of the honeycomb. So half stitch, pin, half stitch, half stitch, pin, half stitch. Just push my threads down a little bit. And then again, so 2 pairs on the left, 2 pairs on the right. So with the 2 on the left, we're going to do half stitch, pin, half stitch, and the 2 on the right, half stitch, pin, half stitch, then the 2 in the middle, half stitch, pin, half stitch at the bottom. Then the last thing to do here is again this little bit of ground, and then the left hand side will be ready to come into this diamond. So back to here, through the edge, back into the ground, out to the edge, the thread is lifting a little bit off my pillow. Okay, so that's come back in left, and then this row of ground here. Cross stitch and twist out to the edge, pin under 2, back in through that foot side passive. So that's the left hand side ready, and then you can move over and do the honeycomb on the right hand side in exactly the same way. Now I'm going to work to the bottom, and you can work the bottom half is just a repeat of the top half, and you can use the same stitches or you can vary them. You can use cloth stitch or half stitch in the diamonds, you can use cloth stitch or half stitch in the little heart-shaped trails, and you can vary the rose ground, you can vary the spider as well. When I've done that, I'll come back and I'll show you how to finish it off. So I've almost finished. I've worked the last cloth stitch diamond. I've brought the ground, a line of ground down the left hand side, and I'm just about to do the last line of ground down the right hand side. So I'm putting a twist on all of those pairs that have come out of the diamond on the right, and I'm going to bring this pair here down the line. So again, half stitch, pin, half stitch all the way down, and finishing at the point, and that's all our pinholes worked. So now we need to bring the 2 sides together to do a nice neat finish and a tassel for the bottom of our bookmark. So I'm going to start on the right hand side, and we're going to do the same on both sides. So if I look at the right hand side, I've got my edge pair and I've got my foot side passive sitting there, and then I've got a pair coming out of every pin down to the bottom. So I'm going to take them in turn from the second pair in, and I'm going to work it out to the right hand edge, put a twist on that pair and leave it. Then I'm going to come back and get the next pair along, and I'm doing this in cloth stitch, so I'm going to work that this time out through 2 pairs, twist it once and leave it, go back and get the next one, cloth stitch out. You can see there's no pins going in here, twist it once and leave it. So as we work along, this little section gets just that little bit wider after every row, twist it and leave it. So you really do need to carefully tension up as you go along. Next one along, take that through. And again. Again, every couple of rows, just going to stroke that down, tension it in. The next one. Again, as you can see, every time I take a pair out, it's working through a lot more pairs to get to the edge, and it's making that little edge section just that little bit wider. And the last one, tension them up. So we've got a nice neat edge there, and now I'm going to go and do, there you go, now I'm going to go and do exactly the same on the left hand side. So again, starting with the second pair in. Very last one. Tension those up. So now we should have a pair either side that have just worked out, and then the 2 bundles. Now at this stage, these 2 bundles, it doesn't matter if they get muddled up within each other, within themselves, but we need to keep them separate from each other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this pair from the right and this pair from the left, and we're going to pass them underneath their bundle, and bring the other pair underneath their bundle, cross them over each other, and then take them underneath the opposite bundle, like so. Then I'm going to take them over the top. So I'm going to take this one over the top and swap it over and under the opposite bundle. Pick up the one that's already there, take it over the top and under the right hand bundle. This takes a little bit of practice to get neat. And I'm going to continue doing that for a little while to build up sort of a little length of cord or tassel, if you like. Take that under there. Over and under that bundle, bring that one over and under that bundle. Just push that up a little bit. Over and under that one, over and under that. And when you've done that, for as little or as long as you like, you're going to tension these up, get it a bit closer to the finish of the work. And then I'm going to bring these pairs over a thread at a time from each side, and we're going to tie a knot around the back of the bundle. So I'm going to take one thread from each side, and I'm going to tie a reef knot and a half, so right over left and through the loop, left over right and through the loop, right over left and through the loop. Lay those down, and then I'm going to do the same with the other pair, right over left, left over right, right over left. Lay those down. Then we can lengthen some of these a little bit to make your tassel as long as you'd like it to be, or as short as you'd like it to be. Bring these threads together and we can trim them off. Then we can unpin your bookmark, and when I've unpinned it, I will show you the variations I did in the bottom half of the bookmark sample. Now the piece is unpinned from the pillow, you can see the lace, and also I can point out a couple of variations that I made in the second half of the piece. So you can see the start point where I did cloth stitch diamond, cloth stitch trails, and this is the double rows. I will zoom in on these sections in a moment. And then we have the spider with the ring, and we have the honeycomb here and here. And then when I got to the middle, I've worked the next diamond in half stitch. Now when you work a half stitch diamond at the end of the row, instead of adding 2 twists, you only add 1 twist, because your half stitch means that your worker has already got 1 twist on it. Then here I have worked a half stitch spider, so exactly the same way that you would work a cloth stitch spider, but using half stitch. So the 4 left hand pairs would work in half stitch through the 4 right hand pairs, place the pin in the middle, repeat that, and then add the twists again, but you can see how different it looks. Then if I just move this up a little bit, this is a slight variation on the rose ground, in that the foundation stitch that I did before and after each section was a half stitch by comparison to a cloth stitch and twist that I used in the original one. Then these trails I've done in half stitch, and then I've finished with a cloth stitch diamond. And then as you can see the bottom, because obviously we've turned the lace over, because when you're working it, you're working on the back of the lace, and you can see our finished tassel edge there. So I shall now zoom in on a few of the sections for you. So again, you can see there you've got your cloth stitch diamond and your cloth stitch trails, your double rows, which is cloth stitch and twist for the foundation stitch, and then half stitch for the stitches in the middle of the rows. Then your ring spider and your honeycomb ground either side here, a half stitch diamond, a half stitch spider, the single rows where I've worked a half stitch for the foundation stitch instead of a cloth stitch and twist, and then finishing with the cloth stitch diamond. And if I just zoom out just a little bit there, you can probably just see, there you go, you can see the difference there, just a slight subtle difference between the two rose grounds. There are lots of different variations to rose ground. And there we have it, the bookmark sample.